The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. It's good to have you here at Winning Business Radio. I'm Kevin Hallinan. Welcome back for another episode. We're now live streaming on Facebook at Winning Business Radio, as well as 7 other platforms, including the station's YouTube, and coming soon will be the Winning Business Radio YouTube channel as well. The mission of this show, as regular listeners know, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others, right? To learn best practices, the how-tos, the what-tos, the what not to's, and to be challenged and hopefully to be inspired by the successes of others. So here's the thing. Every successful person I've ever had a chance to talk to, it's been a lot of them, they've all had some form of failure in their lives and careers. So listen, while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I'm driven to help keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. Let's endeavor to learn from history so we don't repeat it. Today, my guest is Cindy Cushman, owner and founder of HR2Fit. Here's your bio. Cindy Cushman, owner and lead HR partner of HR2Fit, a company she started, is the owner, and it's a company she started in 2017. The company was founded on the principle of presenting businesses with a local and in-person option for detailed HR support, including a customer service platform representing the full life cycle of an employee. Elements of that being record keeping, employee relations, compensation, and benefits administration. Prior to founding HR2Fit, Cindy had an extensive background in the field of human resources. Her experiences include service at Harvard University, Manulife Financial, and Boston Scientific. She has several degrees in the field, earning her BS and MS in human resources from Bridgewater State University and a PhD in conflict resolution from Nova Southeastern University. A native of Massachusetts, Cindy supports and cares deeply about preserving the natural ecosystem and believes that we cannot truly appreciate nature unless we're in it. Cindy focuses on the behind-the-scenes operations of a local nonprofit organization that organizes volunteers and fundraises for the preservation of green space. Cindy resides in Stoughton, Massachusetts with her husband, John, and their 4, get ready for this, Maine Coon cats that are the size of dogs. Their largest cat is almost 30 pounds. Cindy, welcome to Winning Business Radio.
Hello, nice to see you.
Well, appreciate you taking the time. So I want to hear about those coon cats.
Well, they're large and they're loving, and they're pretty amazing animals.
How did you start in the process of? Did you have one first and then more followed, or how'd that work?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I had a Maine Coon cat that I picked up from a shelter, and I just fell in love with them, and just from there, and then as I had other cats and they had passed on, I just unfortunately, found new loves, right?
Absolutely. Hey, tell us, before we get into your background, just tell us a bit about John.
Sure. John is my husband of over 25 years, and
Nice.
he is an HVAC. He currently works at a local university, and he teaches at Peterson School.
Oh, yeah, very good. That's a really well-known school in the Boston area for those that aren't in the Boston area. And so, Cindy, I like the audience, I think I mentioned this to you, to have a bit of your backstory. It just helps with context and to understand we'll walk how you got from way back when to where you are today. So tell us where you grew up. Was it Methuen?
Yes, I grew up in Methuen. And then as I moved through, through college, I ended up in Boston. And from there, ended up in the South Shore.
Right.
Very quickly after that. Yeah.
And just for listeners and the audience sake, viewers, Stoughton is on the South Shore. It's not far from Foxborough-ish, just to put it in context of the broader state. What were your interests when you were young, like in high school? I'm always curious how people made their journey, right?
Yeah.
So what were your interests when you were young?
Yeah. So when I was a child, I always actually considered myself running a store.
Yeah,
Everyone had the Fisher Price, cash register,
that's
and
funny.
yep. And I planned to run a store, and then of course everybody wants to be a teacher. I think
Yeah.
So those are my two dreams. As I moved into high school, it was sort of a hybrid trade school.
Hmm.
So I found my very freshman year, believe it or not, high school, I found a love for accounting, and I took all 4 years of
Oh,
accounting.
yeah.
And it would have thought, right, accounting to HR, but there is a path, I promise. So
What was so you didn't go to college right after high school, did you?
nope, not
A little
right
bit of
away.
a break there. So what were your jobs? Tell us how you started your career,
Yeah.
even if it was completely unrelated. I mean, my first job in high school, I worked in a meat room at a local, locally owned supermarket. It has nothing to do with what I am today, although it taught me a lot of just, a little bit of how business works, but really what it is to work for somebody and learn those ethics. So what was your first job?
Absolutely. So I worked in an accounting firm.
Okay.
It was a internship program
Hmm.
through the high school, and there was an accounting firm that was willing to take on high school kids at the time, and so that's where I fell in love with accounting again.
Yep.
I thought that was actually going to be my career path, but as I started moving through my career, I started to discover that in accounting you actually don't get a chance to really talk to people that much.
Mm,
So
yes.
I moved to being a payroll professional. I picked up my CPP, and from there, I was introduced to HR from payroll. So, and then I was like, this is what I need to do for the rest of my life.
Was it really about the people contact? Sounds like it was important. I could be wrong, but I see the HR role as a real support role,
Mhm.
helping people at companies. Is it more about you wanting to help people?
It was about helping
Yeah.
people. It was about really being that bridge between employee and
Hmm.
employer.
Yeah.
And I always talk about the pioneers of HR. They're out there. They were out there when personnel was just record keeping. That's what
Hmm.
people went and had their time cards, and it became maybe your benefits, and it became that bridge. It really became about employee relations and developing employees and retention, all of the different components of HR.
So before we get into starting the company, I'm just curious. I mean, I want to hear about Harvard and Manulife and Boston Scientific, but where'd you get the entrepreneurial bug? Did it come from a parent, mom or dad, somebody else?
Actually, that's a really good question. I've always just sort of had it.
Yeah.
I enjoy, developing and creating systems.
Hmm.
And not just obviously, not computer systems necessarily, but more how information relates to another, including employees, people, and so.
Sorry, I want to make sure my phone's turned down.
Yeah, no,
I have this checklist. I didn't follow it today, so don't tell anyone. All right.
I promise.
I don't think it's gonna. I mean, it was turned down. I was just double checking. I just had this gnawing thought, that my phone would ring. Let me ask this then: your parents, did they work? Both work? One worked? What did they do? And I'm curious if that flavored your interest at all.
Absolutely. So my father was a union member
Hmm.
all of his life. He was he was an operating engineer. So it created a really good life for us. And my mother, she was part time. She was fortunate that she could stay home
Hmm.
if she wanted to, but then worked when she wanted to. So that sort of created the foundation of how I viewed work, and and how women are in the workforce at
Hmm.
that time. How you could have both worlds, right? So
Yeah, my mother worked. She was a teacher, and thankfully for us and for her, she was out at 3 or 4 o'clock like we were, and we kind of met at home, and it worked out really well.
yeah.
Yeah, my dad was an entrepreneur. Um, let's see. Do you have siblings? Where are you in the birth order?
Yeah. So I have my sister, she works with me here.
Yep.
And it's just the two of us. So yeah,
And are you the older or the younger?
I'm the older.
Okay. So how do you think that flavored your pursuits?
It's a good question. So my parents, in a lot of ways, raised several other of their siblings because there were some young deaths, right? So, so from that process, I was the oldest cousin. I was the oldest. Mm-hmm. So I do only have one biological sister, but I have many sisters. If that makes any sense. They're technically on paper my cousins, but
right.
They're just as close as my sister.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Did you go to Catherine Gibbs?
I did.
So it used to be called Katie Gibbs, right, back in the day.
Yeah.
But that was the gold standard back then.
Absolutely.
Was that how far after high school was that?
So that was about a year after high school. And so that was where I went to school for accounting. Mm-hmm. And I started there and continued at Quincy College.
Were they still doing the white gloves at the time?
Yes.
It really is odd to think about, but it was at the time it was the gold standard, right?
Yeah, it was. And I think what I took away from Katie Gibbs is a way to interact with people on a very professional level.
Yes, that's what I recall. Very professional.
And I don't think I probably would have that same ability to interact if I didn't have that foundation.
Yeah, that's awesome. When and why did you decide a little later that after high school it was beyond Katie Gibbs, right, to get your bachelor's?
Yeah, so it was through the need, obviously, to advance, right? Companies weren't really interested in advancing people that didn't have advanced degrees.
Right.
So, and then I just kept going because I love education and I love to learn.
And that was, you focused in HR, right? You already knew that that was the calling.
Yep. Yeah, I started as the accounting role and then, slowly transitioned over to HR.
So talk about how you made it to Harvard. If I'm assuming this is the way you had it in order, so I'm assuming this is the timeline: Harvard, then Manulife, then Boston Scientific. And I want to ask you a little bit about each of those roles, if you had multiple roles at any of those organizations. So start with Harvard.
Yeah, so actually it's the reverse order.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Harvard.
That figures, right?
Yep. And so I started at Boston Scientific.
What years was that?
How many years was
roughly what year was that?
That was,
best you can recall.
I want to say in the mid-90s.
Okay, yeah.
And then, so in there, I started in payroll, and then I moved over to HR.
Okay, right.
And then, stayed there for some time, and then ended up at Manulife Financial. And
before you go on, what was a key takeaway? This is the last question before our first break, by the way. What would you say, thinking back, is a key lesson learned or a key takeaway from your time at Boston Scientific?
Yeah, so it was really just how a strong organization functions.
Oh, yeah.
That was really a key takeaway.
They did it well?
Yeah. Because prior to that was all, smaller firms. So it was really just that exposure to seeing how everything integrates well.
All right. We're going to come back to that. We will be back in just a couple minutes after these commercials, and especially the message from our sponsor, Bastion Wealth Management. We'll be back with Cindy Cushman in just a minute.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Hey everyone, I'm Jimmy Starr, the king of cool and your host of the Jimmy Starr Show, the entertainment radio show for all you cool and unique people looking to get a behind-the-scenes peek at what's going on in the entertainment industry. Listen in as me and my cool crowd of co-hosts bring you celebrity guests, new music, and the good times in fashion, entertainment, and pop culture. Right, everybody? Right! Tune in live Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on W4CY.com.
Hey, this is Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
Hey, this is Rebel Medler. Join me for In Your Face on W4CY.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bestgen Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We are back with Cindy Cushman, founder of HR2Fit. And Cindy, we were talking about your key takeaway from Boston Scientific. My guess is, and by the way, that's how good organizations are run. Is you bring that to your clients today, that the lessons learned there.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to get specific there in a few minutes. How about Manulife? Tell us about those roles, or that role along you were there, and again, another key takeaway.
I was there for approximately 6 years, and my key takeaway from there was how to manage well.
Oh.
They really had a solid management team that expressed and showed how to be a good employer.
And I asked this question a little selfishly. Did you get management training?
Yes.
That's outstanding. As you probably know, in fact, I'm sure you know, most managers don't get trained to manage. They are just high performers in a role, and they get bumped up and they kind of swim, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see it every day.
What was some of the training like?
So it started with the Myers-Briggs. Everyone took that, and you build off of those building blocks. But the training was really specific to the company, right? How did they want their managers to manage? And that really was my key takeaway on how to design and develop management training.
And so not only did you get trained, you probably developed some of that training yourself or with a team?
Yep, absolutely. Worked within the HR team to develop. At that time, they had over 2,000 employees in Boston.
And that's a financial services, life insurance, financial services
exactly.
for sure.
Financial service and life insurance. Yep.
Right. And so what were your titles while you were there?
That's a really good question. HR administrator. I'm trying to think. There were a few. And then there was, a couple of promotions, and HR management roles followed after that.
Cool. And then from Manulife, did you go to Harvard, or was there something in between there?
Yes. So I had a little break and went to a small company.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, I went to Harvard.
So talk about that experience.
Yep. So from working at Harvard, you mean?
Yes. Sorry.
Harvard is an amazing institution, and it is so large, but yet it's so local. It's really an interesting place, right? So the HR is actually designed that way too. So it's very decentralized, and there is a central component, but it really that's only really for the purpose of compliance. In the decentralized role is really where people have their one-on-one contact with their HR team.
Roughly how many employees does Harvard have? It's a lot, right?
Yeah, it was when I was there, it was over 20,000, and probably 30,000 globally.
I was going to ask you what percentage of that? 30,000 globally, 20,000 in the Boston area.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And so there are professors, instructors, facilities everywhere in between, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A wide range of, different disciplines, and obviously it's Harvard University, right?
For sure. And what are some of the challenges you had to deal with at Harvard?
I think part of it is that being front facing with the employees was that it was difficult to explain why it took so long for certain things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So say a change in benefit plan, it was rolled out, expressed, and then people are looking for it. And it's like, well, no, that's really 2 years down the road, so that's really, it had to be that way for certain reasons because of committees and buy-in and so forth. But that was, I think, the biggest challenge working there.
Were there other significant differences between Manulife, which is, I mean, I'm arguing it's probably public, but at least it's a company versus an institution like a Harvard. What were some of the other differences between the two firms?
Yep. So I think, obviously one's a nonprofit,
right,
versus for-profit.
Right.
I think, Harvard has a very different focus, obviously. And where I worked was primarily at the Arnold Arboretum. So that obviously had a very different focus than the law school. Right. Or the business school. So that was in the same when you compare Manulife to Harvard, it was the same type of thing. They're just distinctly different business models.
All right. You mentioned the Arnold Arboretum. I don't want to move past that. I live like 5 minutes from the Arboretum. I'm in Rosendale, not far from Forest Hills. So tell the audience, it's such a cool place, about the Arboretum.
The Arboretum is an amazing, magical place.
That's all. That's a good way to start.
I cannot express how wonderful the Arboretum is. And I mean, the history and the library, is so extensive. The library staff are so knowledgeable. And then of course, you have it's a living collection. So what's a living collection is that, there are actually scientists working on the beautiful, trees, but keep them, intact and cause no harm.
You know how many acres it is? It's pretty big.
Yeah, it's 265 acres.
And walking trails.
Amazing.
All kinds of colors, all kinds of different seasonal blooms, and it's just a great place to take a dog or to take a walk yourself or walk with somebody. It's just an awesome place.
Absolutely. It's a museum. Mm-hmm. And it's also a public park. So it does combine those two things. And, it really has always been true to its mission.
And I know we're focused on this a little off topic, but it's such a cool place. So I wanted to highlight it. There are people that go overseas on behalf of the Arboretum.
Yes.
To either research or bring back plant species, right?
Absolutely. And it really is as far as research, it's, global, right? It's not just what you see out in, outside at the Arboretum. It also has a greenhouse it also has a herbarium over in Cambridge. So it really has quite a few different components and also has a seed collection, across the globe. It's pretty amazing, the work that's done there.
And it's just like a city Harvard partnership, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. City of Boston is involved in some aspect. I'm not sure. Maybe you can share that, but.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm HR. I used to.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Right. So it was, the partnership was developed by the founder of the Arboretum that had a relationship, obviously, and a graduate from Harvard University, but also wanted to make sure that it never became closed off to the public. So it was created that there would be a lease for 2,000 years for $1 a year. So, and
that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, exactly. So neither party could have control or ownership of it. It had to be a partnership because of design of the lease. Yeah.
And how many employees did the Arboretum have?
There were
round numbers.
Summer internship programs. It was more. So it was over 100 on a regular, consistent basis when you factor in the scientists.
And then from Harvard, I'm trying to figure out the timing when you decided to start the company. But I want to get into education in a minute too. But was there a position after Harvard? Or when you left Harvard, did you get to? Okay, so talk about the transition from Harvard to HR2Fit.
So, there was another position between that was at the Episcopal Diocese. Again, very distinctly different.
Yes, another nonprofit.
Right. Distinctly different mission. And from there is when I decided to open HR2Fit.
So I want you to answer this question, then I want to get back to education. because I think it's what you did is fascinating. Why did you decide to start the company?
So actually, I always saw that small businesses needed the same level of HR that obviously working in the larger corporations that I mentioned and nonprofits, that there was that same need. I mean, it was just not as readily available, or the same style and approach was not available.
So the compliance is is the same, right? They have to follow the same laws as a larger company or institution, but often they don't have the staff.
Exactly. Small, medium-sized businesses are often put in a position where, obviously they have to look at their dollars, and, hiring an HR manager or hire is an expensive position to, even if you do it at a part-time level, it's a lot of resources being pulled into one general area.
So we'll come back to that for sure. But before we get to the break, we have 3 minutes or so. Your journey in education is really cool. Bachelor's, master's, PhD, pretty impressive. It's taken you time because you've been a full-time working professional during those years, right?
Yep, absolutely.
What advice would you give to others about education, and how were you able to power through for so many years? It sounds like you had a mission, but talk about how you had to balance family, work, and school.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's it's obviously you have to be passionate about what you're learning, right? Otherwise, you're not going to show up every class, right? But I think the drive was to always learn new things. I mean, there's always something new changing, and an approach. And the more you know, the more you realize you know what you don't know. Right.
Yes.
And so the struggle is trying to balance that. Right. And it's just becoming really structured in your life, which is not my strength at all.
Yeah.
Certainly. So it was, 6 a.m. writing a paper, 10 o'clock at night, finishing that paper, going to class, making sure it was on certain days, that type of thing.
And on top of that, the PhD, talk about what went through your mind. I'll say it better. What was behind your decision to pursue the PhD?
Sure. Well, part of it is I've always had an interest in, obviously HR management was, great foundational work, right, but really understanding conflict in the workplace. I saw it throughout my career, and I really had an interest in learning how do people resolve conflicts in the most in the best way that people get an outcome can be beneficial to both parties.
And so your focus, it's called, let me just read it, Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution. Conflict resolution, I think, makes sense. Talk about peace studies.
Yep. So really it was sort of a global focal point. So to look at, obviously, areas of extreme conflict and what those takeaways were. So if you look at, historically, some of the geopolitical conflicts, and so from a 5,000 feet view, you don't, see that there were actual, beneficial approaches that took place, but there were things that actually happened that were positive, and that people walked away in a better place. So maybe at the higher level, at the government level, we're not seeing it. But at the individual level, it's there.
What kind of conflict have you seen in the workplace?
Oh, it ranges from arguing over space to not being appreciated. We could spend 2 hours on that topic.
All right, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna come back to that topic in a second. Just maybe a couple of examples.
Sure, of course.
You don't have to name names, of course. No, I want names. No, just in general, so people can get a sense as to the type of things you have to work on. But for now, we'll be back in a couple of minutes with Cindy Cushman, founder of HR2Fit.
Thank you.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamed of having your own radio show? Well, W4CY Radio makes dreams come true. You can be a radio personality on the #1 ranked internet radio station in West Palm Beach, Florida. We can be heard in 105 countries and all U.S. states. Promote your business, earn up to $10,000 per month and more. It's all up to you. Have fun and be heard. Call 561-506-4031. That's 561-506-4031. Start your radio show now.
Hey, this is Rebel Medler. Join me for In Your Face on W4CY.com, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Bestgen Wealth Management is a second-generation, family-owned financial planning and wealth advisory firm. In addition to coordinating complex business and personal planning needs, our firm takes a sincere interest in your well-being and personal values. Find us at bestgenwm.com. That's bestgenwm.com, where we consider all our clients an extension of our family. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor.
Hey, this is Johnny Three Tears from Hollywood Undead, and you're listening to W4CY Radio.
I do whatever it takes to make it break through. Anything I'm face to face with, it's true.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We are back with Cindy Cushman, founder and owner of HR2Fit. So hopefully that was enough of a tease. Just give us some examples of some of the conflict you've had to deal with.
So I would say one of the most challenging is if there's conflicts that were relationships in the company. So maybe there was a personal relationship, or there was, they became really good friends, and then something happened at work that triggered that change in the relationship. And those are the most difficult, I think, to work through, because there's so many different layers to it. And so that's I would say is one of the most difficult.
And you're the lucky person that has to help your client through that, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So you said you saw a need. Talk about kind of why you decided to start the firm.
So it was, as I had mentioned, I've worked at small firms and large, and seeing that businesses of all sizes obviously needed HR, but there's also the compliance. I mean, when I mention even sending an email about, the change in what has just recently taken place on the non-competes, right? It's not clear. It's very arbitrary, but there was an executive order signed saying that non-competes will be changed. So just sharing that information. And so at a large firm, you have your legal team, and that's, who works on trying to figure that out. In a smaller firm, they may not even realize that they have something classified as a non-compete, or language within a sales contract, and so it's just really to develop solid policies and procedures to look at all those different components.
So I'm curious about that, because that topic came up just recently on this show, that being non-competes. Massachusetts has been different than many states. You're saying that's now changed. How has it changed? And are they more or less enforceable? Give us a heads up on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So at this time, it was a few weeks ago that President Biden signed an executive order. But at this time, there is not any guidelines presented.
Was that non-binding?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And so at this time, but it's moving in that direction. So an initiative has been presented to, two sections of the government, one being the Department of Labor, the other being the Fair Trade Commission, and they're working on what that will look like. It will come, I think. Obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but that's my projection is that will come, because it's been such a topic of conversation.
So the arguments are that a business needs the ability to protect its intellectual property, its
Yes.
customers from employees that would leave either on good or bad terms, right?
Yes,
And on the
exactly.
other side of the equation, the employee leaves and feels that he or she should have the ability to work anywhere, even for a direct competitor.
And take some of that intellectual property with them that
Mhm.
they may have developed. And so it is case by case. I really don't like to blanket because
Right.
it truly is,
Right.
what happened, what led to the ending of the relationship, employment relationship. So, and that's where I feel like HR strength is, because we live in the weeds,
Yes.
right? Um,
That decision, those policies affecting a non-compete, that could be pretty landmark, as when and if it happens. Assuming it does, I think you're probably right, by the way. So starting the company, give us the timeline. You were probably working while you were making that decision. What was behind, the process. Talk about the process and when you decided to pull the trigger. You left wherever you were. You didn't have any clients yet. So talk about that.
Yeah, so it was really trying to figure out what would be next, right? So always thinking, I was always looking ahead, trying to figure that out. I had hit a certain point with my education and with all of the things that I've done in my career.
Mhm.
And I said, what I always struggled with in HR is that trying to live through some of the sort of the pressure of maybe call it politics, maybe,
Mhm.
and you're always trying to make sure everyone's happy, right? And so you're constantly playing this, okay, if I say it this way, this person might get upset, that type of thing.
Yep.
So I really just wanted to do HR, right? The day-to-day nuts and bolts,
Yeah.
interpreting policy, having those, difficult conversations, and so that's when I said, you know what, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna do this. And I always envisioned that you could fractionalize HR. So I say that we're an HR team. We're an HR department fractionalized for businesses, and that's really what the goal and drive has been towards.
So they can get best-in-class solutions and not have to pay for either a full-time person or department for that matter, right? They can get your wealth of experience for the number of hours, or I'm not sure how you do it, but let's just assume for the number of hours per week or month, and therefore they get a fraction of you and your company.
Yep, absolutely. We work off a subscription plan,
Mhm.
so it's need-based, and
Mhm.
it's worked out really, really well.
How did you choose the name?
So I was sitting at my desk at home, one of those random okay, now I have this grand illusion of okay, I'm going to become this, business owner. What am I going to call the company?
Yeah.
So you go through all these, scenarios in your head. And I said, what am I actually trying to accomplish? And I'm trying to fit, the businesses that I'm working with,
Mhm.
and it really does fall into that same space, because really each client is different and different needs. And so it's worked out really nicely.
So I'm going to mention a few things that your LinkedIn profile has, and it was probably your bio. It was your bio. But I want you to flush these out and then talk about anything else that you do for clients. So it's record keeping, employee relations, compensation, benefits administration. Talk about each of those and how they, the kind of work that you do and why that's needed, and other services you may provide.
Sure. So record keeping, I think, is one of the weakest areas that businesses have.
All you need is a W-9, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Everyone could be just a W-9. And even large firms, I saw that really as an area that was not there wasn't a lot of concentration put on it until it needed to be.
Yeah.
Right. Until there was a need to have those documents. So that's one area that I really feel like we focus on. We help clients through what do they need? How long do they need to keep it? There's nothing exciting about it.
Right.
It's just,
right.
It is what it is. Right.
Well, it's only exciting if you
documents. That's it.
It's only exciting if you think about the fines that you don't have to pay if anyone would come in and review your files, which happens, right?
Absolutely. Happens all the time. And then there's the panic call. Well, what do I do? Well, don't worry. it's all set. We have everything in order, and you're good.
So the Department of Labor, either federal or state, comes in, and it's usually, well, I'm just totally guessing. It's not random. Is it usually that somebody complained, or are they out there knocking on doors randomly?
No, it's usually there's some kind of trigger, typically,
Yeah.
or there was a previous infraction.
Okay.
And then you're on the radar. But then again, that
but they're from the government, and they're there to help, right?
Absolutely. Famous statement, right?
Right.
And so that's when that happens. But then the panic call comes in.
Yeah. All right. Employee relations. You talked a little bit about that. Flesh that out some more.
Sure. Employee relations is really, making sure that employees' needs are met. And that's on so many different layers, right? It could be that, it's seamless to change their benefits, or it's those conflict situations, or it's the development of their their trajectory in their career. So all of those, everything in HR is related to employee relations on some form or another. And so it is a bit wide. You could say training, you can say communication. Communication is always a key piece. Every single client I've had, or any company I've worked with, the one thing people complain about, I just didn't know. There wasn't enough communication. Always. It's a standard. So you build in what you can.
For example, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, having them sign an employee handbook, having read it when they get hired.
Yep, 100%. Yep. And it's also, even just business updates. We picked up a new account. You don't have to get into the weeds of the finances, but buy-in, right? We're all in this together. A company really can't run without its employees. So that's, a big part of that equation of the balancing act.
What about compensation? Do you design plans? Do you help just manage? You do. Okay. Talk about that.
Absolutely.
That's pretty complex.
It is. Obviously C-suite is not something we would focus on, but anything below that, really just do comparables, internal, external, depending on the size of the company, ensuring that it's, you have geographical, you have title, you have job responsibilities, all of those pieces feed into compensation.
Is recruiting part of this as well?
Yep, absolutely. Again, below C-suite,
right.
And looking, at any position really that someone needs help filling. And it's just walking through all those steps. And recruiting is really another place, again, if it touches upon employee relations, it touches upon record keeping. So you have to make sure that, you're asking
fairness and equity.
Exactly. You have to make sure you're keeping the documents, the appropriate timeline. You have to make sure, what questions were asked to the candidates, is those records are retained. And so all of those different pieces. And then, of course, all the way through the onboarding process.
And benefits administration, that's got to take a lot of time.
Yep, benefits administration. So we're not, obviously not broker. We don't write work with brokers, but we provide that, again, record keeping. Someone comes on, they add it to the plan, they leave, they come off the plan. And that's also another area that I see that clients struggle with.
So this would be health, dental, vision. Does it include 401k? Really, any kind of benefit? Any
kind of benefit.
And you manage some of those client relationships for your client?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're, again, trying to be that liaison between the, the plan administrator and the employer.
So who's on your team, the type of folks that are on your team? And it sounds like you probably have a virtual team as well.
So we have staff members that are payroll, that are obviously focused on payroll. They just, again, the same side of the administration, benefits, payroll, and also recruiting. We have recruiters. We have also trying to go through my list.
Yeah.
My apologies on that.
No, that's a good way to do it.
Benefits administrator. So we have a wide variety of staff that do, again, provide that HR team approach really an HR department at your disposal.
And is some of what you do short-term transactional? Is most of what you do long-term relationship, really that permanent fixture until maybe they grow to the size where they need or want a full-time department or person?
Absolutely. So we do develop strong business partnerships, and we stay with them until we do have had clients that hit that plateau where it's like, okay, it's time. It's time for you to get your own HR person, but for the most part, we try to develop those relationships long term, and we are your HR department, just a call away.
And how often are you on site? How often are you? I mean, let's take the pandemic out of it for a second.
Sure.
We'll come back to that, I'm sure. But pre-pandemic, let's say, how does the C-level access you? How do the employees access you?
So typically try to have a either weekly or biweekly, sometimes monthly meeting with the executive level. And just to make sure that everything is going according to plan. And then we have, obviously call, I don't want to call it a call center because that's not what it is, because you end up with the same person. You're dedicated, right? So we have dedicated generalists. And then you have, if you have some recruiting needs, you go to your recruiter. If you have some payroll needs, you go to your payroll person. So it's, it really is, like I said, when a client signs on with us, they receive, the contact names. Primarily, you'll always go through your generalist. So
I may be making this up, but it seems to me I read the word platform. Does that mean there's an online component to this?
Well, I used it in probably a platform, and we do have a platform that we use just to make sure that we're getting back to people within two hours.
Is there some kind of, do you recommend a portal where they can access their documents, records, that sort of thing?
So we use, I don't know if can I say the name of the company?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. We use Bamboo as our electronic record keeping, and that's how we communicate with our clients as far as records.
I think Bamboo's required to pay you now. So send them a bill.
Yes, I agree.
Now, this is like the obligatory question. I'm sorry, getting sick of asking it, but people want to know, how has COVID affected your business?
It's been a struggle. I mean, because obviously, when people laid everyone off, we didn't have employees.
Yeah. They must have needed you for that process as well.
It was sort of hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
Everyone. And then when people started coming back to the office, what did that look like? And I really felt like we went from an HR department to a crisis center. And we're obviously moving away from that now, but it's the calls were just, it was constant. And every single minute of every day was, what do I do? I have an employee, can I come in? Can they come in? No, it just.
So you're helping set policies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which are not easy to set either in this changing craziness, right?
And that's it. And the guidelines are changing so frequently.
Yeah.
You just didn't really know from day to day, is this same policy going to apply tomorrow? Travel policy. Yeah. On-site work, who can go on site? What states, because each state had different policies. So, it was a challenge. And I still feel that we're still a little bit stuck in it. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions about, can I mandate vaccines? Can I ask people, because there are a lot of questions.
I know that question's come up a lot.
Right? The HIPAA questions, and if someone refuses, why? And, can you ask why? And so it really, so I just work with clients case by case and try to figure out, what's best approach. And we just, use our knowledge and try to make the best of the questions. So.
Well, it sounds like you've got a wealth of experience. Believe it or not, we are up against it. We're out of time. Tell the audience how they can reach you if they want to reach out.
Thank you. So our website is HR2Fit.com. My email.
HR the number two. HR the number two.
That's
fit.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
HR2.com. And you can email me directly at Cindy, CINDY, Cushman, CUSHMAN at HR2FIT.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know you're crazy busy. Appreciate you carving out some time.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You got it. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. This is a show about business and business challenges. If you've got concerns about the growth of your company, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Winning Business Radio. You can find me, or drop me a note, kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. That's one of my email addresses. Our company, Winning Incorporated, we're part of Sandler Training. We develop sales teams into high achievers and sales leaders into true coaches and mentors. We're not right for everybody, but maybe we should have a conversation. Thank you, as always, to expert engineer Rebel Medler. Tune in again next Monday, August 30th, 4 p.m. Eastern. My guest will be Danny Cushman, founder of Twist. And Twist is a brand storytelling company. Pretty cool. Until then, this is Kevin Hallinan. Thanks for being here.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.